everyone, and welcome to TE 250 News. I'm your host, Gabrielle Stremers, and today our topic is funding and education. Whether you're an expert on the subject or you have no idea what I'm talking about, our report's for you. We have special reports covering the No Child Left Behind Act, standardized testing, funding for specific states, and how technology is affected by funding in schools. And now to our first special report with Jacob.
Thank you, Gabby. I'm going to be talking about No Child Left Behind and standardized testing and its effect on funding, which is pretty interesting, I'm not gonna lie. So since 2001, it's kind of changed because the No Child Left Behind Act kind of shook things up a little bit. It was a reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. Standards are set at the state level, but every state has to submit to testing to receive the federal funding. By 2005 to 06 school year, states were required to begin testing students in grades 3 through 8 annually in reading and mathematics. By 2007 to 08, they had to test students in science at least once in elementary, middle, and high school. The tests had to be aligned with state academic standards. A sample of 4th and 8th graders in each state also had to participate in the National Assessment of Educational Progress Testing Program in reading and math every other year to provide a point of comparison for state test results. And through an alteration in the Title I funding formula, the No Child Left Behind Act was expected to better target resources to school districts with high concentrations of poor children. The law also included provisions intended to give states and districts greater flexibility in how they spend a portion of their federal allotments. Of course, it's up in the air exactly how much this supposed targeting of lower class schools actually worked. So what are some of the pros and cons of this act, you might be asking at home right now? Well, it makes progress quantifiable. Of course, we can argue about how well you can measure success with standardized testing. It creates accountability for faculty, teachers to make sure there's some progress. Disadvantages, like I mentioned, it may actually further disadvantage schools by cutting off funding when they might need it most. And yeah, standardized tests don't always necessarily correlate to what the goals of education really are. So I'm skeptical, I don't know about you. And now to Jessica for a report on different types of funding throughout the US. Sounds boring, but all right.
Thanks, Jacob. I'm Jessica, and I'll have a special report on different types of funding across the United States. The U.S. Constitution leaves the responsibility for public K-12 education with the states. The federal government, through the legislative process, provides assistance to the states and schools in an effort to supplement states' support. Now we are going to look at 3 specific examples of funding in the United States. The first example is Michigan. Michigan wants to open its textbooks to school districts, but only those that can show their students actually are learning from year to year. The education money would be divvied up based on district performance, not individual schools. Districts would get a share of the money if their 3rd through 8th graders have shown a year's worth of learning in reading or math, or have acquired above average knowledge in several subjects. The next state is South Carolina. Statewide, public schools will be funded at an average of $11,754 per child in the 2011-12 school year in South Carolina. This money comes from taxes assessed by local, state, and federal governments. Certain state programs for public school funding are closely tied to student enrollment or state revenue collections. Statewide, there is no consistent relationship between funding and poverty, and there is also no consistent relationship between levels of student achievement and funding. The last state is Nevada. Nevada's goal is to ensure an adequate educational opportunity for all students regardless of individual school district wealth. Therefore, the state created a plan where they develop a guaranteed amount of funding for each of the local school districts. The revenue which provides the guaranteed funding is derived from the state and local sources. On average, this guaranteed funding contributes approximately 75 to 80% of school districts. To determine the level of guaranteed funding for each school district, a basic support per pupil amount is calculated for each school district and it is established in law each legislative session. The amount is determined by a formula that allows for differences across school districts and the cost of providing education and in local wealth. Through the guaranteed basic support, the legislative determines a significant portion of the local school district's operating funds. And now to Kyle for a report on the effects of budget cuts on technology in schools.
Thanks, Jessica. According to the American Association of School Administrators, the 2012 fiscal year is the fourth year of school funding budget cuts. This means that schools will have to limit or completely cut out many of the resources available to students, such as technology. Technology provides access to rich multimedia content for more personalized learning. Many electronic resources require the internet for them to be helpful to students, and according to the Federal Communications Commission, 97% of students across the country had internet connectivity as of 2010. While this is good, far fewer, however, would be able to successfully meet the need for higher speed access. Huge differences in technology infrastructure are present, and many openly doubt that capability will catch up with demand, since new digital tools used in education are requiring ever-increasing amounts of bandwidth, requiring the high-speed access connectivity that few schools have. Because technology infrastructure varies widely between districts, the federal government's desire to focus its efforts as a facilitator of infrastructure access has become somewhat controversial among education technology advocates. This was especially evident when the Enhancing Education Through Technology, or EETT program, was in jeopardy. The program, which was initially funded at $700 million annually, but had dropped to $100 million annually by 2010, was the only federal program within the U.S. Department of Education's general funding devoted specifically to education technology. This was a huge blow against bringing technology into the classroom. States also differ widely in the financial commitment they make to education technology. While 32 states dedicate a certain amount of funding toward technology education, 18 states do not. While those states who made the commitment have a positive impact on education, those who do not provide any funding for technology are lacking what has become a vital form of education in modern-day schools.
To conclude our special reports on funding, we found that there was inequality among the states in regards to how they received funding. Funding has a direct correlation to student achievement, and we found that lower-income schools are put at disadvantage because they are teaching to the test, and their students who are already disadvantaged are falling behind even more. Students of richer schools are becoming more privileged, and by receiving more funding, they hold more of the power over students in lower income areas. Thus, they're widening the socioeconomic gap and continuing the cycle of socialization. Thanks to all of our reporters, and thanks to everyone watching at home. Stay classy, TE250.